is as a perfect political storm that had a congregation of events that just came together into an electoral aberration and made Donald Trump one of the luckiest candidates ever run for president. Of course, he did have a little help from his friends. Coming up? It's not coming up. We're having there he is. There's his friend. So, you know, what a lot of us really wonder is, how could somebody who insulted women, mocked disabled people, insulted Mexicans, attacked immigrants, refused to release his taxes, how could somebody who really get elected president? Some people say, well, he's a Teflon candidate like Donald Trump. Like Ronald Reagan, sorry. But that's really not true, because Trump had the lowest approval ratings of anybody ever to run for office. The only thing is, one other person had very low approval ratings too, and that was Hillary Clinton. And this points around to one of the big developments in this campaign. It really has to be looked at because it really threatens our political system. And that is, it's hard for the voter now to tell between the truth and what's not the truth. And there's a lot of fake news that was put out. There's been a lot of discussion on that recently, but most of it is really geared towards Hillary. And I think that seems pretty reasonable, because you know, how can you put fake news out and become more outlandish than to say that Trump did, that, you know, Mexicans are criminals and rapists, or that he didn't pay taxes for 18 years. It just wouldn't have made much difference. But a lot of this stuff came out against Hillary, and the average voter is not able, as in the past, to really separate the facts. So you had two Velcro candidates. For one of them, the truth, as is Trump, stuck. And for the other one, much of what wasn't true stuck. That's not to say she was perfect. She made many mistakes, such as in emails. But a lot of this other stuff stuck, and it just isn't in the nature of the average voter to go through and just keep researching and researching and researching and try to find out what all the truth is. As I say, this is a long-term problem we're going to have to address. Some people say that this election was really about change, but it really doesn't show that. Democrats picked up a few seats in Congress. Incumbents still were widely elected. You look at the votes between Democrat and Republican candidates for Congress, it's almost the same. Interestingly enough, Donald Trump was outpolled by all the Republican congressional candidates in the country. But Hillary Clinton actually received 4 million more votes than Democratic. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it's an interesting figure. And then the other thing is why this was really not about change is, as the campaign went along, Barack Obama's approval rating kept going up. If people aren't happy with the status quo, they wouldn't be supporting it. So let's go back to November 8th. These are poll results from the last major polls. And everybody was pretty much expecting that Clinton was going to win. Of course, that didn't happen. Sure. But the polls, you know, people afterwards wonder how come they were so wrong. Well, they weren't wrong. Yes, those that predicted Trump to win were off by 4 or 5%. But you start looking at those for Clinton and the vote, they're pretty close. And you look down here at Real Clear Politics National Average, which is a compilation of all these polls. They really only, they had Trump pick up about 1.2%. That's not bad poll taking. That's pretty darn good, accurate poll taking. But the big problem is that this is a national poll. And here in the United States, we do not elect the president in a national election. We elect the president by state elections. And there was a dearth of critical state polling in the week before the election in places like Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Wisconsin. So, the actual results. A week after the election, Kellyanne Conway, Trump's campaign manager, said, "It wasn't even close, and Donald Trump has a mandate for his agenda." Well, I hate to break Ms. Conway's bubble, but to get a mandate, you first have to have a plurality. Actually, you have to have a majority, and a convincing majority, and that is not here. How did Donald Trump turn this into a victory? It's because of the archaic system, as you all know, we call the Electoral College. And in the 64 elections that we've had for president, 5 of them have misfired, but a popular vote leader has lost. The last case before this was 2000. In 11 of the closest presidential elections of 3% or less of popular vote, 4 of those have been aberrations like this. That's almost a 40% rate. This is not an unusual circumstance to develop. And it happens when a country is evenly divided, as we are right now. 2 of our last 5 elections have been decided this way. And the last time this happened in that kind of frequency was right after the Civil War, when this country was divided also very equally in 2 out of 4 elections. This fired along the same line. What generally happens in this case, when a candidate gets in, they do not have a mandate because they don't even have most of the people supporting them, or plurality. And they tend to be weak and ineffectual leaders. And they tend also to be single-term presidents. George Bush is the only one that ever won re-election. And one can make the argument that the only reason he did that is because shortly into his presidency there was 9/11 and the country came together, and he was the political beneficiary of it. Donald Trump's going to face much of a similar situation. And he has a special problem because he's the only person ever going to be to assume the office of presidency who has never held or has never been elected to or appointed to public office. He's a political novice. And he's probably about to get a schooling. But take a look at this. There's some really interesting things here. 1 million people write-ins. That is unprecedented. Nothing ever like that come up. Evan McMullen, he entered the race in August when campaigns are getting ready to head for the final stretch. He was only on the ballot in a handful of states. He ran clearly as an anti-Trump, anti-Clinton candidate. He pulled over 20% in Utah, nearly 10% in Idaho. And then you look at Johnson and Stein. We have a very interesting metric we can use here, and we want to compare the 2016 election to the 2012, because Johnson and Stein were on the 2012 ballots as well. The main difference that went on is you had Barack Obama and Mitt Romney instead of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Johnson and Stein, they got 3 to 4 times more votes in 2016 than they did in 2012. Altogether, 6 million more people voted third party in 2016 than they did in 2012. If we compare the 2 elections, first thing we'll point out is there are 8 million more people voted this last year than they did in 2012. It was a higher turnout, about 6% higher. Actually, that 8 million, some of it was a little bit from natural population growth, but really there was a much bigger turnout. And if you look at it, Clinton got about the same amount of votes as Obama, with 8 million more voters. Trump had 2 million. Picked up some. But the big difference, of course, is the third party. How do you evaluate all that? Well, there's a lot of ways. I mean, Trump could have brought out more voters, as it appears. A few more, but a lot of other people just turned away, too. Voted third party. There's also another interesting figure here, too. A lot of times, we go to vote, we don't always vote for every office. Usually it's a county office, state office, something like that. But quite often, people go and they vote. They feel obliged to vote, but they don't like the presidential choices. And the general rule is, you got about 1 million people who just skip the presidential part and go down to the other parts of the ballot. This year, there's another million. So in addition to the 6 million people who voted for third party, you had another million that just said, I can't vote for anybody here, I'm moving on. And that isn't just the total of third party and the total of this, that's a 7 million that was extra this election, which proves this election wasn't about a mandate, but really a lot more about disgust and among the typical voter and being unhappy with both of these candidates. Let's see. Let's take a look here. This is where the map, the results broke out. You've probably all seen that. The reason that it's cross-hatched up here in Maine is that Maine is like Nebraska. It'll give out electoral votes by congressional district, and Donald Trump did carry one congressional district up there. So he got one electoral vote, and Hillary Clinton got 3. These are the states that changed from 2012 to 2016. Mainly up here in the Midwest. That's where the difference is. That's where Trump won. You look up here, he won pretty convincingly by 36, that congressional district. He won very convincingly in Ohio, almost 500,000, and same thing in Iowa. Florida down here, he won by 1%. Obama had won it by 1%. So it was very close to the same. But you look at Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The difference in those states is all less than 1%. 78,000 votes swung those states combined. 78,000 votes swung those 3 states, 47 electoral votes from Clinton to Trump. And that 46 electoral votes is the margin of victory. Now, a lot of people will say, yes, well, Trump, raised jobs and manufacturing issues, trade issues, and he riled up the white working class and got them out to vote, and overwhelmingly, and that's what made the difference. And this is the area, a lot of people say, that's where a lot of jobs have been lost over the last 30 years. Matter of fact, on election night on CNN, one of the CNN commentators, Van Jones, he referred to what happened up here as a white lash. And there's some truth to this. But this isn't why Hillary Clinton lost. Pew Research did a study right after the election. And here's a breakdown on whites with college educations and those without a college education. Donald Trump got 67% of those without a college degree. It's your white working class. Seems to build upon that whole comment, doesn't it? Hillary Clinton only had 28%. That's a 39% gap. Case over, right? Well, not exactly. Because you have to look at this in a historical perspective. This is a trend that's been going on for some time. John McCain carried that same demographic over Barack Obama in 2008 by 18%. Mitt Romney carried it in 2012 by 25%. Yes, Trump jumped that up to 39%. Maybe he had an extra 7 or 8%. Maybe he added 14% just on his own. But it's been a long-term trend going in that direction. This used to be a Democratic stronghold into there. Over here, the whites with college degrees, Trump won that by 4%, 49 to 45. But that needs to be looked at too. This, ever since these have been done in the, since, well, 1950s have been testing this, no Democrat has ever won white college-educated voters. And that gap is closing. Mitt Romney won it by 14%. Yes?
So between those two, though, is there a population demographic change with only about 25% of the people having college degrees and 75% of the population not having college degrees?
I don't have that, but when I'm going to kind of address that in a minute of how that meshes together.
So it's like there's 1/4 here and 3/4.
Well, it's not quite that way, but sort of. But we'll get to see how that fits in. Anyway, it's 4% is what Trump won this by. Romney won by 14. It hasn't been moving as quite as the direction the working class has. It's been up and down a little bit. McCain only won it by 4%, but it's been definitely trending in the way that this has been becoming a lot more Republican oriented. So you combine these two together. This massive white working class and the split divide here among the white college educated voters. How much more of the white vote did Donald Trump get over Mitt Romney? 1%. 1%. That big onrush of white working class voters, it may very well make a difference up there in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, where you were less than 1%. It played a big critical role up there. But it isn't really all that much different. There's something else in here to play. And let's take a look by race. Here's a 1% better than Trump did. But Clinton, among blacks, did 7% less than Barack Obama. And then if you really want to be surprised, among Hispanics, she was 8% lower. Hillary Clinton carried Hispanics over Trump by 36%. That was less than Trump carried a white working class. Actually, Trump polled about the same amount in the Hispanic vote as Mitt Romney did. Some people say he even did 1% better. So it isn't so much the white working class came all for Trump, because that seemed to be offset by more of a white college-educated voters. It was a drop in minority voters that hurt Clinton. But there's even some more quirks into here, too. These are the 14 swing states. These are the states the candidates all campaigned on, heavily. Remember earlier I said that the vote had increased by 5.9%. Well, in these 14 states, where the candidates had traveled up and down and campaigning hard, the average national increase is 5.9%, but in these states it's 4.8%. You go to the white states where the candidates didn't show up much, it's 6.4%. The more these candidates showed themselves, the less enthused the voters were. So, let's look at voter turnout by state up here. This is kind of interesting, and you look up here in the Midwest. See these red ones? That's a voter turnout decline. These are states that all Trump carried. Yes, there was a big surge in Florida and Pennsylvania, but in some of these others, there was actually a turnout decline. And then over here in the West, if you look, there's a big surge of voters out here in the West. This is a big increase in California, in Texas, Utah, Nevada, Arizona. So whatever's happening here is, if you're making an argument that Trump poured out all these white working class voters, where is the turnout? Maybe he got them. Or maybe something else again happened here. So let's look at percent increase of votes for Trump. Yeah, I say put for Trump twice, but anyway, for Trump over Romney. These dark states, this is where Trump polled, and I'm talking about not percentages, but raw numbers. These are states where Trump polled over 10% better than Mitt Romney did. And then these red ones here, which includes much of this Midwest area, it's about 3 to 10%. And so you can make an argument, okay, yeah, these white working class voters turned out up here, although the voting totals were down. And you start getting over here to these pink ones, this pale red pink, I guess what you call it. And Trump had less than 3% increase, but you got to realize nationally we had about 6% increase. So he didn't really do that good in that way. And in the white states, Donald Trump underperformed Mitt Romney. He got fewer votes than Mitt Romney, fewer votes in California. And the important thing to kind of look at this is Wisconsin. It's really a paradigm onto this election. Because what is happening here in Wisconsin, it's white. That means Donald Trump got fewer votes than Mitt Romney. But Mitt Romney lost it to Barack Obama, and Donald Trump carried it. And that kind of points out to what really happened here. Yes, Trump did pull out some voters up in here. But Clinton's voters did not turn out. It wasn't so much that Trump mobilized a huge amount of voters. It's that Hillary Clinton did not. They either just didn't come to vote, or they voted third party, or something happened. Interestingly enough, you look over here in the West, you remember this is over high turnout, just in the previous one. And yet, here's Trump pulling less than Romney in a lot of these states. In California, Barack Obama won it by 23% over Romney. Clinton won it by 30%. She had over 900,000 more votes than Barack Obama did. In Texas, deep red Texas, Romney won it by 16%. Trump won it by 9%. Clinton closed a gap from 1.3 million to 800,000 votes. There's 500,000 votes there, 900,000 in California. 150,000 more votes that Clinton got in Arizona. You get 50 more in Oregon, 50 more in Utah, and a few other else. You start looking around that whole West area out there, Hillary Clinton pulled 1.5 million more votes than Barack Obama did. Yet, she had the same amount of votes as Obama, nationally. So that means she had to lose 1.5 somewhere. Right here. So the election, again, is not because Trump really pulled the voters out. It's that Clinton couldn't motivate them. And a lot of that has to do with both these candidates being Velcro candidates and them being discussed in the election. But as I say, the real reason Donald Trump won is here. It's not because Hillary Clinton's necessarily a bad person, because that's the image that people had of her. But she really was a bad candidate. Because of the issues that came up, she could not address them. Back in 1952, Richard Nixon was vice presidential candidate in the Eisenhower ticket. Come around September, it was found out that there had been some financial improprieties going on. And he had been taking a few gifts and a few things, and there was a lot of talk about kicking him off the ticket. So he made a speech on television, which was the most widely watched television event up to that point. On that speech, he made a real emotional appeal, and he referred, to do that. Well, see, he was modest means, and he had grown up in a poor lemon farm in California, all that kind of stuff. And he said, well, just let the Republican Party know if I should stay on or not. And he basically ended it saying, he says, well, I'll give up all the rest of the stuff, but I'm not going to give up this dog that I was given. This dog was given to my daughters. Its name is Checkers. And that's the famous Checkers speech. But you see, Nixon handled that. And another candidate, like a Bill Clinton or even a Ronald Reagan, could probably have deferred away a lot of this. But Clinton never had her Checkers speech. And that is what really kind of haunted her through this whole thing. Plus things like this fake news which comes up. And surprisingly, 1 out of 7 people who really disliked Trump ended up voting for him. Apparently because they disliked Hillary even more. Of course, then we had the Electoral College quirkiness. And there's a political realignment taking part here too. We saw a little bit of it up in the Midwest, where voters are going more Republican, and you can see this happening in the West, including in places like Texas. But the problem going on there is that the gap is very wide, and the political realignment is a few generations away, while for the Republicans up in the Midwest and some traditional Democratic strongholds that are turning a little more Republican, those states are actually now in play. So this kind of quirkiness we're seeing in the Electoral College, we're apt to keep seeing. The other problem, of course, is pointing out is minorities just didn't turn out for Hillary. But there's one other impact in here too. And That has to do with the Bushes somewhat. Because you see, if Hillary would have been elected, then we would be going into 24 of the last 32 years where either a Bush or a Clinton was president. And Americans really don't care for political dynasties like that. That's probably one reason that brought Jeb Bush down in the primaries. And it probably is the back of the mind of a lot of people saying that maybe they did want change. Not change of big things in Congress or whatever, but they wanted a fresher face in there. As disgusting for many voters that Donald Trump was, he was a different face. And when you're only talking about just fractions, 78,000 votes in this entire country making a decision, it doesn't take too many people to change their minds. And that is basically a perfect storm that developed for Donald Trump and rode into victory with this archaic electoral college system we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. That was terrific.
I always learn something. I'm not kidding.